Join me in doing my makeup while I talk about your rights as a worker and justice. Well, I really want to talk about this because this is something I didn't really know about until I got into it. And it's really, I'm using this as a PSA because this is something more people need to know about. So I used to work at a makeup store, and one time I was at work with one of my coworkers and the manager, and I was talking about like wages, like how much are we getting paid, and, like me and my coworker were talking about that, and my manager was like, hey, just so you know, like be careful who you're talking about that type of stuff with, because if you say it around the wrong manager, they can write you up. So I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, it is a fireable offense to talk about wages with each other. And I was like, now I want to say I do not blame this manager or any other managers that were kind of telling me this, because I think they were just repeating what they were heard. I loved most of my managers, so I want to say I don't blame them for this. I go and I ask some of my coworkers who have been there for a while about this, and I'm like, have you heard of this? And they're like, yeah, we're not supposed to talk wages, we can't talk about it. So I go home and I do a little Google, and sure enough, on the Department of Labor's website, it says it is unlawful for employers to forbid their workers from talking about wages. So I come back and I tell my coworkers, yo, I found this, but like we're all a little scared to test it. And eventually I decide I'm gonna quit anyway, like for other reasons, but like for that too. On the day, like my last day, I hang up a printout from the labor board that says you may not discourage workers from talking about wages. And I put that, you know how they have like labor bulletin boards in the back of all the labor things? I put that printout on that board. So the next day, one of my friends who I'd been talking to about all this, who works there, and who also we found out was making like $1.50 less than everyone else, even though she had been working there for like 3 years, longer than anyone else. And that's, you know, probably why they didn't want us talking about wages, so we wouldn't find out these things. But she texts me and she's like, oh, you know the thing you hung up? The general manager came in the store when they were opening, and she was like, who did that? And everyone was like, not me. And she took it down and threw it away. I am fired up now. I'm like, okay, we're gonna play that game. So I go on to the labor board's website and I file a complaint against this company. And I'm like, they told me we weren't allowed to talk about wages. And, you know, I honestly didn't think much would happen with that. Like, I don't know what I expected. But after a little bit, I get a call from the labor board and they're like, yeah, we're taking on your case. So for the next 11 months, I am doing legal stuff. It's not constant. I just have to answer emails and some phone calls, you know, give my affidavit, all those things. And I'm in a slight little legal battle with this company. Obviously, they're denying that they ever had this. They say, no, our policy specifically states that you can talk about wages, but just because the policy states it doesn't mean people do it. Someone is telling people that that is the culture. And one of my other coworkers, she used to work at a different location, and she did get written up for it, for talking about wages, but it was like too far. It was like after 6 months, so she couldn't report it to the labor department. The labor board then writes up just like a little settlement for them, and basically the thing, like what the settlement says is that the company has to post on their bulletin board in the break room that workers are allowed to discuss their wages, and then they have to email everyone that ever like worked at this company since I was there and this incident happened, that they were allowed to talk about wages and there was a settlement. And if the company did not sign the settlement, then I would have to go to court and argue all this as like a witness for the labor board. But thank heavens, I found out today that they signed the settlement, so I don't have to go to court. I really don't get anything from this, except for, you know, letting all the people at that store know that they are allowed to talk about wages. And that's pretty much all I wanted, and that's why I am telling people here, because this is such a common thing that happens. So yeah, talk about wages with your coworkers. Find out if you all are making the same thing for doing the same job, and don't let big companies push you around, because they don't always have your best interest at heart. And if your company is doing something shady, report them. We can't let these companies get away with what they get away with. Even if it's small, we got to stand up for ourselves and do what's right. I am feeling pretty good today, and this is the finished look.